May the words of my mouth and thoughts of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Shalom all, welcome, buenas noches, bienvenidos to our classes in the teachings of the Kabbalah. I am, of course, your host, Ariel, part of Tzadok. You find me online at KosherTorah.com. We are presently in a series from the Sefer Hiziyonot, the Book of Visions, which is Rabbi Hayim Vital's autobiography. And of course, we know Hayim Vital is the master Kabbalist of the Safed school from the 1600s. We are using a blessing that is available in English under the title Jewish Mystical Autobiographies, published as part of the Classics of Western Spirituality series. The book is available softback, hardback, on Amazon.com. And again, I would always appreciate that if you do make any purchases from Amazon, to access Amazon through our link at KosherTorah.com, because Amazon always gives KosherTorah a little kickback for every purchase that you make on Amazon that you access through KosherTorah. So whether you're going to purchase a book, your toothpaste, toilet paper, television set, or whatever else, Amazon always gives us something, and it's a good way to help support KosherTorah, and of course we thank you for that support. But now, we are now in a very, very interesting section of the book. We are on section 21 in part 1 of the Book of Visions. In the English, it's going to start on page 52, go through page 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. Oh my. Keeps on going and going and going. Yeah, all the way through. Now, why is all this important? Because we are now going to introduce the topic of the Jinn. Do you know who the Jinn are? Did you ever hear of the Jinn? Right? Of course you have. You are very famous from the Jinn because in English, Jinn are called genies. And of course you will remember Aladdin, or by his proper Arabic name, Al-Adin. You remember he rubbed the lamp and the genie popped out? Maybe you'll remember the old Larry Hagman, Barbara Eden television sitcom from the 1960s, I Dream of Jeannie. Okay? Those are the Jinn. Now, most will interpret Jinn in English to be demons. However, there is a significant difference in understanding who and what are Jinn from the Jewish and Muslim tradition as compared to the Christian tradition. In the Christian tradition, the Jinn are demons. Demons are all the servants of evil, the dominions of Satan. There is no good to them at all, and they're all, evil little devils. That is not the way Jinn are portrayed in either Judaic or Islamic tradition. Indeed, there is even a chapter in the Quran on the Jinn. And Islam has had, to this very day, a very long history and interaction with the Jinn. Now, I was debating prior to class actually how I wanted to format this lesson. My question is, do I want to first read the material outside of Rabbi Hayim, or do I want to read Hayim first and then go into the material? And I decided that I'm going to read the material first. And I'm doing this for a reason. I'm going to give you some Islamic insights into the Jinn. And I'm going to read to you from a text which deals with the Jinn from Islamic sources. And this is going to be a rather long teaching, which might take up this entire lesson. Maybe we'll have to go into another. I don't know. We'll see. And then, with this introduction, I anticipate that you're going to be sitting there rolling your eyes and going, oh, come on, you really believe this stuff? Because it is so wild, as you're about to see. And then I will read to you Rabbi Hayim, which is written 400 years before what we're looking at now. And then you can juxtapose one to the other and see that what is said and believed about today was around way back when. And if you offer or accept any authenticity from the hand of Hayim Vital, then you might have to reconsider how you will look at the modern material I'm about to read to you. So I give you this introduction even before I begin to read, because I want you to hear this material. Of course, I'll quote to you what book and everything else, and I'll put up a link to it at KosherTorah when the time comes, because this is fascinating stuff. This gives you insight into an entire other side of reality, which most people are completely oblivious to. And this, in quote, other side has been around forever. We read about it in Talmudic literature. We read about it in Kabbalistic literature. And most people in the West are completely oblivious to just how detailed the experience is in Islamic literature. With that introduction, let us talk about the Jinn. Genies, if you will. I prefer not to use the English word demon, simply because I know that it will be misinterpreted within a Christian context, which does not belong here. I'm going to be quoting to you from a book called Legends of the Fire Spirits, Jinn and Genies from Arabia to Zanzibar. It's written by a Robert Lebling. He's been a journalist. He's worked in Egypt and Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. And let's see, is there a copyright date on this? This is a copyright 2010. So it's a rather new book. I want to open up by quoting from his material here about the Jinn. Let's see if we can offer some identification to what a Jinn is. On page 4 of his book, he quotes here, well, let me read it to you. In the 14th century Mamluk Egypt, a scholar named Muhammad al-Damiri made an effort to explain the remarkable creatures, the Jinn, in a zoological, which some would say parazoological opus called Hayat al-Hayawan, or the life of animals. The Hayat is an ambitious book that describes 731 different animal species, with numerous digressions into theological opinion, folklore, traditions of the prophet, and draws on 585 other prose works, 222 poetic sources. Al-Damiri fits Jinn comfortably into the world of animals. He describes them as ethereal beings capable of forming themselves into different shapes. They have reason, understanding, and capability for hard work. They are different from humans. It is said that they are called Jinn because they are wary and not seen. He recites a tradition of Abul al-Darada, a companion of the Prophet. Stated, God created 3 types of Jinn. A Jinn which are snakes and scorpions and vermin of the earth, a type like the breeze in the air, and a type like humans, who are subject to judgment and punishment. Continuing, he quotes here Muhammad Asad, 1900 to 1992, a highly regarded European Muslim thinker and author who converted from Judaism. His birth name was Leopold Weiss. He described Jinn as certain sentient organisms of so fine a nature and of a physiological composition so different from our own that they are not normally accessible to our sense perceptions. If we assume, as we must, that there are living organisms whose biological premises are entirely different from our own, it is only logical to assume that our physical senses can establish contact with them only under very exceptional circumstances. Hence, the description of them as invisible beings. Now, we have, again, in our Judaic tradition, which actually does quote in the book here, numerous stories and interactions with the jinn. An interesting thing that's described about the jinn in Islamic literature, and surprisingly, Jewish literature, including Rabbi Hayim here, is that these jinn, like human beings, have religion. Even the Zohar speaks about the Jewish jinn. That there are species of jinn who fear God, worship God, and practice human religions. Now you might be rolling your eyes. Oh, come on. Are you telling me that there are born-again evangelical jinn out there? According to the Quran, you bet there are. So, that is what's interesting. So, let's move on here. Okay. Again, even the Zohar says that there are Jewish jinn who observe mitzvot. And you can say, why? Theologically, I don't understand. I get that. But now, let's try to understand. What exactly is a life force energy? A life force energy, if we could ever see it, would look like a ball of light, pretty much. These have been spotted and seen in the atmosphere, in low orbit. They have been seen around the world, everywhere. These are what we would call energy entities. Some of them might be the ominous Tili that is referred to in Kabbalistic literature. People can reference the Sefer Tziyuni, Parshat Acharei, for a detailed discussion of them. We've discussed them in numerous classes on KosherTorah. There are, of course, the disembodied souls. Those who don't go on once they pass, but get stuck here in earth. I didn't say on earth, I said in earth. They become what we would call the poltergeist or the possession spirits. But then you have this other race called the jinn. And in Pirkei Avot, it clearly states that God created them. Now, we don't necessarily have as involved a teaching about them as does the Muslims. We know that they were created by God. We know many serve God. But the Muslims say that God created them to serve Him for a purpose and a way and a reason. What exactly that is and how that is, those are very interesting discussions within Islam. Now again, I'm not here to necessarily discuss Islam. We're going to discuss this material within the limited context as how it will apply to our reading in Sefer Hiziyonot of Rabbi Hayim Vital. Now, to give you a little insight into the nature of these Jewish, Christian, and Muslim jinn, I want to turn to a section in our book Legends of the Fire Spirits and read to you a rather lengthy section starting on page 141. Because the jinn, interestingly echoing a teaching from the Zohar, actually get involved and interact with human affairs. Jinn can sometimes take physical form and have actual relations with human beings. And I mean sexual relations, which supposedly, according to the legends, can lead to pregnancy on part of either the jinn or the human, where in which you would have a hybrid child. And again, the Tziyuni writes that the hybrid children that are born from a human father and a jinn mother are considered to be the royalty on that side, and they are held in the highest esteem. And of course, ideas and beliefs of these hybrid children crosses over into all the world's conspiracy theories and how they're infiltrating us to take us over and all this other kind of silliness and nonsense. Again, I am sharing this material for educational purposes, and I must confess, for entertainment purposes. I am prefacing this clearly to emphasize to you, take this all, please, with a grain of salt. Okay? This is not, if you will allow me to use the term, gospel truth. I know people believe it. You make your own decisions. How's that? Where are the jinn today? What's happening? Well, again, let me share with you from Legends of the Fire Spirits, from the section called Jinn Geography, starting on page 141. Hear this. Since the Palestinian Intifada uprising against Israeli occupation erupted in the occupied territories in 1987, contending with jinn has become a growing business in Gaza. Sheikh Abu Khalid, an exorcist, said that the number of possessed Muslims had more than tripled. He says, I suspect that Jewish magicians send jinns to us here in Gaza. In fact, most of my patients are possessed with Jewish jinns. According to, and he quotes here a book written by an authors Robbins and Post, both Jewish and Christian jinns are reported to be black in color, but the Jewish ones are distinguished by the horns growing from their head. Apparently, Jewish jinns are based upon Michelangelo's Moses statue. And again, take this with a grain of salt. But remember, even though we look at this from an academic point of view and we might chuckle, the people who are involved with this, very, very much like evangelical Christians, believe this to be absolute objective reality, and it terrifies them. Please, don't go there. Let's continue. He states, a more in-depth look at the phenomena of jinn possession amongst the Palestinians was conducted by Celia E. Rothenberg, an anthropologist who conducted 14 months, from 95 to 96, of field work in the West Bank village of Artas. Rothenberg explored how the experiences of some women and men with jinn embody the multiple dimensions of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The human body, in relationship with or possessed by a jinn, thus becomes a site for the enactment of this conflict in surprising and revealing ways. In one case, a young Palestinian woman from Artas, identified as Zahia, experienced episodes of possession by a Jewish jinn after she moved to Jordan to marry her cousin. During the periods of possession, the Jewish jinn spoke Hebrew through her mouth. It attempted to use her body to strangle her infant son. Back home in the West Bank, the male members of her family worked together with Jewish men, building Jewish settlements. Given the nature of the village social life as Zahia had experienced it, the young woman's story appears, in Rothenberg's view, to be a commentary on how Jews and her own male family members may seem to collude in shaping and constraining her life. According to Rothenberg, given that Zahia was forced by her father to marry her cousin in a relatively distant place and blocked from returning to the West Bank by both social mores and Israeli bureaucracy, and that she was aware that her family's very livelihood came from Israeli Jews, her possession by Jewish jinn embodies the ultimate realm of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Here's another one. In another case, a young Palestinian man named Muhammad, while serving time in an Israeli prison, was attacked by a Jewish female jinn. Their relationship quickly became an extended friendship, lasting through Muhammad's time in prison. At times, Muhammad allowed the jinn to possess him in order to entertain the other prisoners and to scare his Israeli guards. The nature of the friendship between Muhammad and the jinn was surprising because of its settings and its sheer improbability. The Jewish female jinn initially sought a prison love affair with the Palestinian man, but she came to accept the friendship instead. This account of possession dealt with the possibilities which might emerge in relationships between Jews and Palestinians in a very unlikely setting. Indeed, Rothenberg found that their relationship, realized in the experience of possession, addressed numerous layers of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, which are often overlooked. Such additional levels of conflict help compare notes of Jewish-Arab experiences of oppression, the underlying frictions between similar but divergent ethnicities. The Palestinian jinn experience have many similarities to the Arabian, etc., and so on. So I'm not going to go into that, but let's stop right here. The examples of these stories, from a skeptic, psychological point of view, you and I might conclude are more indicative possibly of a psychological problem than an actual interaction with the jinn. Okay? From our Western point of view, that would be what we would normally conclude. But I emphasize the people, if you will, over there, they don't see things like this. They clearly believe this to be true. How true? Don't they have their own psychologists and psychiatrists? Well, let's move on. Let's discuss Syria and the Red King's daughter. Remember the Red King of the Jinn in Syria. Rabbi Hayim Vital talks about him too. So, before you will be so skeptical by this version, are you going to be equally skeptical of Rabbi Hayim's? I read from page 143 in Legends of the Fire Spirit. According to some Islamic traditions, jinn are distinguished by colors. In Syria, the tradition holds that the king of the jinn is red in color. Ernst Zibende finds a very charming correspondence between old and new perceptions and the notion that the most evil jinn are colored red. But he was able to confirm this view only in North Africa. The general theories about jinn stem from ancient works of Arab magic. Some of the handbooks or grimoires, mostly of Egyptian origin. Among the 7 jinn princes, remember the 7 jinn princes, Egyptian, North African, Syrian folklore, called the king Al-Ahmar, or the Red One. Alright, Zibin reports, the red jinn are the troops belonging to him. In the Persian epic Shahnameh, there were also colored demons, and above all, colored demon princes. But there is no discussion in that work of red dibs, dib being the Persian equivalent of jinn, or indeed of the belief that red dibs would be the most evil ones. The Egyptian legend contains the best parallels between old and new. For red was the color of the ancient Egyptian god Seth, and was therefore the color of all evil. The red jinn are the descendants of the troops of the god Seth. Zibin declares, and there probably hides behind the cryptic name the Red King, no one other than the evil god himself. The red or the red one is probably a designation for the god Seth. Whether or not Syria's jinn king is the epitome of evil, a doubtful proposition. Perhaps. He certainly is red. And the jinn of his kingdom engage in pursuits that are quite familiar to us by now, including possession. Okay? Interesting little side note, which you will see will come back when we discuss Reb Chaim. But now, let's take things into a different turn. In 2002, an article appeared on an Arabic internet website that purported to be an interview with a female jinn who had possessed a human being. The article was written by someone called Mr. Abdel Razak. And the interview was set in Damascus, Syria, and includes discussion of Jinn kingdoms and the phenomena of Jinn possession. The article consists of various conversations between the author and his paternal grandmother, Husna Kanum, which took place, as he put it, when I was quite young. The dialogues were not literally with his grandmother, he says, but rather with the jinn that possessed her. The spirit had taken possession of her many years before, during the French occupation of Syria in 1920, when the constantly exploding shells had caused her psychological trauma and opened her to jinn possession. The manifestation of the female jinn would come and go, depending on circumstances over the years. At times, Husna Kanum would seem totally normal. At others, the personality of the jinn would take over. From a psychological or a psychiatric point of view, this might sound as classical multiple personality. But here's the issue. For those who deal with psychiatric cases, multiple personality disorder and the like, you will find that the illusions or delusions of the individual are somewhat unique to the individual. They don't coordinate or cooperate with other external sources. They are pretty much what they are, isolated within the mind of the individual. The information that we're about to read here is rather interesting. You could even say entertaining. But the harumph moment of it is that it does coordinate and cooperate with other material from sources separated by culture, language, and literally centuries of time. The writer, now I'm continuing to read, the writer's discussions with his possessed grandmother included these exchanges. Now I'll just read it to you in the question and answer format. Question: what is your real name? Answer: our names are secret and cannot be given. We borrow names similar to your names and keep them throughout our lifetimes. Question: where is your location in this world? Answer: our location is also a secret. Now, just this side note and comment here, you could say, well, typical of a psychiatric problem in which somebody doesn't have answers, they have not created a fantasy, and therefore they create the concept of secret. For those of you who've dealt with multiple personality or people in psychotic episodes, it's not usually the way they deal with things. They usually create something very, very visual. And this concept of the secret locations and secret names is, interestingly, exactly what is taught in Zoharic literature and Sufi literature, amongst others. So it is curious how this individual would have had access to the teachings of these secret, if you will, teachings of the religion. That again, here's that cooperation. Moving right along. Do you have continents and countries as we do? Answer: no. But we have many kingdoms, kings, princes, and people. Question: can we know the names of some of those kingdoms? Answer: we describe our kingdoms in terms of colors to bring the concept closer to your understanding. So we say the red jinn, the blue jinn, the yellow jinn. But in reality, these colors are expressions of differences among us. Question: then you two are veiled from each other as per type or color? Answer: yes. We are veiled from seeing some amongst us, and we cannot see other types of jinn from other kingdoms, but there are exceptions, as the situation now. Question: Husna Khanum, what is your position in your world? Answer: I am the daughter of the Red Jinn King, who still reigns over our kingdom. Question: how old are you? Answer: 27 years old. Question: are you married? Answer: no, not married. Your grandmother doesn't leave me with much free time. She summons me often to come to cure people and solve problems arising from jinn. Question. I know you are a Muslim. Do you have other religions? Answer. Yes. We have converted to Islam along with humans and have entered into this holy religion. We have other religions and we have infidels. We are much like you in this respect. Question. How are you able to enter our world? Answer. We see and feel you because your density is higher than ours. This can be exemplified by a staircase whose steps go up from the subtle to the dense. This is as regards the physical formation. The basic structure of humans contain all the steps of the staircase, but your science still has not attained even a minimal knowledge of the real structure of the human being. Till now, we've unable to interact with you in a good way except through you by entering your bodies. Question. Can you explain to me how do you enter our bodies? Answer. We enter the human body during one of the moments of its life and at a certain state of it. Question. What do you mean by a certain state? Answer. I mean when the soul splits from the body for a period of time and then we open a loophole through which we can enter. Question. When does the soul split from the body? Answer. Many are the states in which the soul splits from the body, other than death, of course. Temporarily splitting, such as during dreams that occur in sleep. The hero of this kind of dream is the soul, or the astral body that goes out and flies away. Question. That means you enter when humans dream? Answer. No, of course not. We can't reach someone through these exits of the body. If this were the case, it would be easy to enter all human bodies. Question. Then which state are you talking about? Answer. There are many states, quite a lot of them, such as a coma resulting from shock, a fall, or a crash, or those that occur during extreme panic or terror. All such states, in addition to the psychological state of the target person, are suitable for entering a person. Question. Are there targeted persons? Answer. Yes. Due to our structure, we can see you without you being able to see us. By your normal actions, you might cause us harm, either intentionally or not. In this case, the person who caused us harm becomes a target for us, and we watch him closely, and when a certain entrance state occurs, we take the opportunity and enter him. Just as a side note, you will find that Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, in his book Sefer Hasidim, dating all the way back to the 12th century, wrote pretty much the same thing. Question. What languages do you speak? Answer. We don't have a specific language. We communicate telepathically. But through you, we speak your languages, which we learn through our interactions with you. Question. Can you tell us something about your social life? Answer. Yes. It's very similar to your life as humans, especially after your humans die. Question. In reality, we don't know anything about the shape of our life after death, except through the philosophies we study. Answer. When you die and remove this heavy body garment, you move to a stage which is very similar to us as regards motion, formation, and relationship, especially at the lower stages of your non-material existence, when you shall live in a parallel world very similar to the world as regards places and feelings. Your physical, sensory life is but a school in which you learn, taste, hear, smell, and see. And you graduate after death to a non-material world, a feelings world. You benefit from your earlier life by acquiring certain experiences that qualify you for the non-material life, and you become capable of certain conceptualizations through which you live and develop to higher and higher grades. You repeat the experiences over and over again. Each time, the experiences increase greatly to reach the final form that promotes you to a higher plane. What I want to say is that you are similar to us in that first stage of the other world. Question. If I ever became like you, what would I see? Answer: you would see a transparent, misty life. No matter binds us, no physics or chemistry, but feelings and formations similar to you in appearance, general appearances. But as to contents, we differ from you. Question: do you eat and drink, or what are your energy sources? Answer: we do not eat or drink. We are energies by ourselves, programmed energies subject to higher law. We develop or degrade as per our deeds. We are also subject to the law of divine reward and penalty, like you. Our good deeds reflect positively, providing us with the subtlety that promotes us on top of the staircase of the transcendence. And our evil deeds make us go back towards the higher density and keep us within the bottom layers. Question: why are you called inhabitants of lower order worlds, despite the fact that, especially the believers among you, have, as I understand it, a composition similar to angels? Answer: we have described this term, lower order, for an important reason. The reason is not our position in the universe, as some would think. It is because we are below you in density. As I've said before, it is a reversed staircase for us. But for you, the staircase is not reversed. And here lies the secret. Had this staircase been not reversed, the Jinn would have been humans in advanced stages, transcending the material state, thus becoming angels, as you said. Question: am I to understand that when you develop and are promoted, you go down? Or is it the opposite? Answer: not spatially, as you understand it. You humans are very much bound by matter, in addition to time and space. The gist here is that we, as Jinn, and you, as humans, have free will, the ability to choose good or evil. And this is what distinguishes us both. But each of the two species has its directions. Not spatially as you imagine, but mentally. We develop in a certain direction, and you develop in an opposite direction. We live the first stages as neighbors, and talk to each other as if we were undergoing an examination in the same school, but each in his own class. At the end of this test, each of us exits through a separate door. We and you are a basic condition for the existence of this school. And while we are similar to you at one stage of your transitional stages, this does not mean that we mix with you after evolving. Question: many times I've heard about or seen human males or females possessed by jinn who go into convulsions and break down psychologically. This leads people to claim that all those who have relationships with you are mentally ill, especially in the first stages. Can you explain this? Answer: can you imagine a watermelon entering through your nostril? What torture that would be! It isn't easy for a foreign body to enter into the structure of another body. The torture affects both parties, the host and the hosted, but in different degrees. The jinn has a different consciousness, mind, and environment, and enters a body that's not parallel in structure. And this is what causes torture and misery, especially in the first stages. Question: then why do you enter these bodies? Answer: for us, these bodies are a window of relief. The jinn who enters a human is fortunate and enjoys beautiful periods of his life, giving much of his time and energies in the service of humans. Question: so why do cases of jinn manifestation or possession occur so frequently only in our regions? Or to use the better phrase, in underdeveloped societies. Why not in America or Europe, for example? Answer: there are possession cases all over the world, but their treatment differs from one region to another. In addition, we have a greater presence in certain societies because of the prevailing manner of the thinking or the cultural background, which provides the right setting for our entrances. As I said before, we wait for the proper moment, and these are many among you. Also, you enrich the opportunity greatly since your social composition is more suitable. End of quote. That should give you a very good grounded understanding of how the jinn are looked at in modern day Islam. We spoke about jinn kings. We spoke about jinn princes. You will find in the writings of Rabbi Yehuda Fatia and his Ruchot Misaprot, the spirits speak, Minchat Yehuda, available in English, that he interestingly had curious interactions with Shedim, as we call them in Hebrew, in a very similar light as that which is described here in the Islamic sources. We find throughout Jewish history. We covered this a long time ago in our Jewish Magic and Superstitions series. If you remember, we read from Joshua Trachtenberg's book. And he brings down numerous traditions from the religious communities of what we call the Hasidei Ashkenaz that existed around Crusade times in Europe. And these traditions about the Jewish Shedim exist continually from the Zoharic tradition. You have books, I'm almost certain, available in English today, which outline numerous cases of possessions. I remember one very interesting story. Is it true? Is it false? It's a story. Take it for what it is. That stated that there was this old house that was in ruins. And a family went and moved into it. And all kinds of strange poltergeist events began to happen. Finally, they realized that the house was haunted. But it wasn't haunted by a ghost. It was haunted by Jinn, Shedim. And the family who bought or lived in the house took, the bet in there to try to exorcise the house. And the Shedim were living in the house contacted or spoke to the rabbis and demanded an audience, saying, "This house is ours." And they literally set up a bet din with litigants between the human members who claimed ownership of the house and the Shedim members who claimed ownership of the house. This is the legend. This is the story. Remember, these types of stories are brought down to us, supposed to be legitimate. So, you put a question mark over it. But this type of interaction, the legends thereof, are documented in great detail. And again, unlike in the Christian tradition, a good number of them are positive. Many of you might be aware, we covered this actually in a course in our Legends of the Talmud series, of the famous king of the Shedim in the days of King Solomon, Ashmodai, and how he was pressed into service by King Solomon to help in the building of the temple in Jerusalem. That Ashmodai sent, if you will, an entire entourage of Shedim workers who helped Solomon in the building of the temple. Oh my goodness, is that true? That's what the legends say. So, curious and interesting. But with this introduction into the nature and the reality of Shedim, I want to turn now to our Book of Visions, to Rabbi Hayim Vital. Because like the rabbis before him, and I might add like the rabbis after him, he too has his interactions with the jinn, the Shedim. And what we are about to introduce now is this material. Many of the concepts which I will now read to you from our Book of Visions, you will have already heard from our book, Legends of the Fire Spirit. And I will take a wild guess that Mr. Lebling, who wrote Legends of the Fire Spirit, did not read and does not know of the teachings of Hayim Vital and the Jewish Kabbalah. And therefore, I would discount any claim that, maybe he read this and put it then into his book. Like I said, that is not logical. should dismiss that having any validity. It is not a valid opinion. Carl Jung recognized that people who have psychotic experiences can often see things, experience things, which are completely outside of the behavioral experience of the individual. For those who are of the opinion that no one can express anything other than what has at one time or another been exposed in the brain, Jung showed that that was not the case. This is actually how we came to the discovery of what we call the collective consciousness. Well, if we have a collective consciousness and there is a truth to the spiritual realm, well, guess what? It's a very populated place. Before I even read Reb Chaim, I would postulate my own views and belief. We've always taught that there was an other side. The world or dimension right above our physical world, called Asiya, is called Yetzirah. And the Yetzirah, as we know, is the world of the 6 Sefirot, which are called the Midot, which are called the emotions. How curious that the Jinn that spoke in Legends of the Fire Spirit described her world as one of personified emotions. That's exactly what the Kabbalah says. Either the Jinn is studying Kabbalah, or maybe there's more to the story than meets the eye. And on it goes. So these are the curiosities. Like I said, the similarities, the corroborations, which is very unlike psychiatric cases, and gives us that harump moment, which makes us question, gee, how much of this is really true? At least from the skeptical point of view. And now let's turn to our book, the Book of Visions, number 21. It's on the bottom of page 52. This is an episode that happens in the year 1609. The intermediate days of Passover, Chol HaMoed in Hebrew, Rabbi Yosef Sigura went to the home of a magician who was expert in geomancy and seeing demons. He first cast the sand lots with a spell, as was customary. Sand lots. Goralot. In Walking in the Fire, I translated and published a couple of goralots. They are kosher, holy, divinatory tools. Many people swear by them. I'm not here to judge. All I can say is what they are and provide the information academically, which is what I've done. But this type of goral, this type of divination, even though the Code of Jewish Law itself, written by Rabbi Chaim's contemporary Yosef Karo, wrote, don't do goralot. Everybody's done goralot. Rabbis greater than before Rabbi Yosef Karo and equal to him in stature after him all did these types of divination practices. This is a very common thing. It's actually biblical in origin. Alright? It is what was referred to in the Bible as a lottery. You can go and read my introduction into the Goral Achitofel, which is available in Walking in the Fire, and learn more about that. But this was a type of a divination into the use of sand. I'm not going to get into the details, it's irrelevant for us. But the purpose was to contact the Jinn. Continuing, he asked, who is Rabbi Hayim Vital the Kabbalist, and for what purpose was he created? And they answered him, through the sand. You're not asking about yourself, but about someone else. He is a very exalted person, and every day he meditates privately and grieves over one matter that he longs for. This matter is not based on the elements of fire and water and earth, but is from the elements of air and water. The conclusion of this matter will be very good. Now you could scratch your head and go, huh? What did that mean? Well, that's a good question. Whenever you talk with Shedim, Jinn, right? Sometimes they're making references to concepts and ideas that we, in our present circumstance, might not get. It requires of us education. Let's move on. Afterwards, He asked by means of a glass mirror. The 7 kings of the demons came with their 7 servants. 7 kings of the demons? Where did we read about that? Didn't Lebling just refer to the 7 kings of the demons in Legends of the Fire Spirit? Again, was he reading Rabbi Hayim Vital, who wrote this 400, almost 500 years, 400 years plus before? Okay, curious. The 7 kings with their 7 servants come in the mirror. And afterwards came another 7, and then another 7, and another 7, until there was a total of 28 kings and nobles, minus the above-mentioned 7 servants, who always stand before the 7 kings. The 28 kings sat on golden chairs, studded with gems and pearls, crowned with golden crowns, studded with gems and pearls. And he commanded them to bring my image, which is called Karina. And when it arrived, they all stood before me. And they gave me one of their chairs and entreated me, but I did not sit on it. Moreover, I distanced myself in order not to be made impure by them. Impure? You'll notice that there was no reference to purity or impurity in referencing Shedim from the Islamic tradition. But here Reb Chaim introduces it. If he's so afraid of being impure, what the heck is he involved with chatting with them in the mirror anyway? Remember, this is the mirror. This is all going on in the glass mirror. This is part of mirror gazing. I've taught elements of mirror gazing as a part of a reflection of one's inner self. But I warn people, indeed, you'll find that there is references to this in Kabbalistic literature. Be careful what you see in the mirror. Right? Alice was not the only one who went through the looking glass. And therefore, remember, the glass is actually just glass. There's nothing in it. It's not a magical portal. But what it is that it opens up elements in the mind that the senses can then use to project realities that can be perceived in the mirror. But the curious thing about it is sometimes it can be seen only by one. You might remember the story of Daniel in the Bible, where it said he had the great vision of the angels, and only he saw it. The people all around him were all freaked out because they knew he was seeing something that they couldn't see. And yet there are other times when others can see it. There are numerous invocations in Kabbalistic literature in which a cup of wine is used. This is actually a reference to Joseph in the Bible. If you remember, he supposedly had a magic goblet. Well, the way Joseph would do it, said he was able to gaze into the cup of wine and see in the reflection all of the Jinn and Shedim talking to him, just like the rabbi here, Rabbi Segura, is using the mirror. So, the concept of the wine, looking into the wine, is a procedure still documented and recorded in Kabbalistic literature to this day. Needless to say, we do not encourage it. We do not encourage people to try to make contact with the jinn. Why? Because even though the proclamations are that this is actual and real and legit, the dangers of self-delusion developing into full-blown psychoses, in my opinion, is all too real and a good and valid enough reason not to tempt fate. But let's continue with Reb Chaim's experience. He asked them. He's afraid to get impure from them, so he doesn't want to sit in the chair they offer him, but he's willing to engage them in conversation, so apparently he sees them too. For what reason was this one born and it was life? Alright? And he says, will the redemption come in his lifetime? Actually, this is Rabbi Segura asking Rabbi Chaim. So one of the servants of the king who was in charge of that day answered. He said, how can you request redemption when there are great sins amongst you? Causeless enmity, perversion of justice, denial of charity to orphans and widows. What the heck? Who's talking here? This sounds like a prophet talking. This is the kind of thing I'd expect an angel. And this is the Shedim talking? My, what kind of moral superiority do they present? This is not what you would expect the Shedim to be saying. But that's what's recorded as what they are saying. From the day that this man, again a reference to Hayim Vital, was born, great good came into the world, and the world began to be illuminated, because he is very great and exalted in heaven. With his prayers he is able to annul evil decrees, and to issue decrees according to his will. Should he want to glue these two walls together, he'd be able to do so. All of this is because he has no anxieties about this world. Not even about food, clothes, or money. All of his desires are for the matters of the world to come. How would they know that? Well, if you remember from what we read in Legends of the Fire Spirit, they look at humans and see our energy. Every one of us has what's called an astral body. The body, we call it in Kabbalah the Chalukah Rabbanan. It's what we inhabit right now. And when the physical body goes its way, it's what's left us. We don't move from the physical body into the astral body. We are already in the astral body. The physical body cloaks it. And when the physical body goes the way of nature, we are left in the astral body. And we appear in a world to come, just like Legends of the Fire Spirit said, looking very similar to this world. That's called the lower Garden of Eden. And that experience is a reflection, like the emotional state, the Yetzirah state, your midot, your attributes, your character, and who and what you are. And that's what creates reward and punishment. So, the jinn are actually able to see the soul at that astral level, to see who and who's what. So here, the king of the Shedim is seeing and saying this about Rabbi Hayim Vital. He continues and says, he's already struggled greatly to cause you to repent, but you do not listen to his voice. Had you listened, how much good would have come to you? There are 3 people here in Damascus. Oh, he's in Damascus. This is where the Legends of the Fire Spirit story took place. I wonder if there's going to be a connection. There are 3 people here in Damascus who hate him, and they are the primary cause of the damage, as a result of which the people do not listen to his call for repentance. But he does not worry about them, for they will all fall like dust beneath his feet, and they do not recognize his greatness. You have many troubles, and in the future you will have greater troubles, because you do not listen to his admonitions and sermons. After the coming trouble, 4 nations will fall and be uprooted, the first of which is Malta. Afterwards the redemption will come. Indeed, it is impossible to be redeemed until 10 great men will gather around him. What on earth is all of this? Is this messianic prophecy? Curious. They are the 7 lower spiritual levels, and he is the greatest of them. 7 of the 10 men have already been born, and the sage Vital and 6 others. Some are in Damascus, some are in Safed. The sage always thinks of going to Safed, and now he is ultimately forced to go there. 1 of the 7 has already died, but this is not a hindrance, because his merit exists in the world as if he himself still exists. Afterwards, 2 great men of the above-mentioned 6 will come, and later the 10th one will come, and they will all gather around the sage. Then they will gather Israel to be redeemed. Oh well. Apparently, the predictions of Geulah are as unfulfilled as the Jewish, can I say. Then he continues. If one of them will not be completely perfected, he will have to die and transmigrate, reincarnate, until his repair will be complete. The redemption is delayed because of this. It would be necessary that they all love each other completely, and that they have attained perfect piety, as has been mentioned. The sage knows all these things, since the ways of heaven are as clear to him as the noonday sun. Nothing is hidden from his great wisdom. However, he is a master of esoteric wisdom who conceals things, and inwardly he worries and grieves. All his thoughts are on this matter. Since the redemption depends on these 10 and the completion of their repair, we have no information to give you about the time of the redemption, because it depends on their deeds and their repair, tikkun. However, there is no doubt that if all Israel were to listen to his voice, the redemption would come in his lifetime. Indeed, with all this, the sage's future will be very good, prosperous, and joyous. He now has a small son who is very clever, but is not yet mature. His future will be very good, but he is not among the 10 mentioned. All this happened on a Sunday when the Christian king of the demons ruled. Christian king of the demons? Curious. Therefore he alone, through his servant, with the agreement of all 28, they remained silent. And that day Joseph Romano, the seer, decided not to look into the demonic matters anymore. That night he dreamed that a man said to him, "Be careful. If someone will call you tomorrow to look at this matter today, do not avoid going with them, because through you a great mitzvah will come into the world." Okay, I see we have gone over as it is. So we're going to have to pick up this story in our next class. But again, if you'd like, you can actually read Legends of the Fire Spirit. It's a very interesting insight into Islamic Jinn. Continue, if you want, reading ahead here in Rabbi Chaim's experiences. And put the two together. And you can stroke your beard like me if you have one, and say, "Very interesting." And leave it at that. So again, thank you again all for joining me for this class. I'm your host, Ariel Bar Tzadok. Come see me next time in our next KosherTorah.com classes. See you all then. God bless. Good night. Shalom. Night. Shalom. Night. Shalom. Night. Shalom. Night. Shalom. Night. Shalom. Night. Shalom.